Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the CGA podcast. Today we have Rachel Perlman. She is a licensed certified genetic counselor. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Internal Medicine at The Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, TJ, for having me. I'm really excited.
Oh, yeah. Geez, our pleasure. So today we're going to be talking about an article that you were lead author on. However, you had a lot of help with a very deep authorship. And if people haven't seen it, it is recently published in JCO Precision Oncology, and it is Prospective Statewide Study of Universal Screening for Hereditary Colorectal Cancer, the Ohio Colorectal Cancer Prevention Initiative. So congratulations on the publication. And again, thank you for coming and chatting about it.
Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, I know it's been a long time coming.
So what led to the concept of this article?
Well, the concept really started with the study that preceded the OCCPI, and that was the Columbus Area HMPCC study that CGA members Heather Hampel and the late, great Dr. Albert de la Chapelle conducted from 1999 to 2005. And they had enrolled colon and endometrial patients from 5 sites around Columbus, Ohio, and then they did universal tumor screening and germline mismatch repair testing. And from their findings, we know the prevalence of Lynch syndrome. We know that it's common in colon cancer patients, and it was clear that universal tumor screening should be done. Many professional societies began incorporating it into the guidelines. Yeah. And then the 2012 Beamer paper reinforced that, yes, it does work. It's cost effective. But only 71% of NCI designated cancer centers and 15 to 30% of community hospital cancer programs are actually doing it. So depending on where you walk in the door, your colon cancers could be treated differently. And I can certainly understand why smaller hospitals may not feel comfortable ordering it because most don't have a genetic counselor on staff. So they really had no way to follow up with the patients who had abnormal screening. But it's still a problem that needed to be addressed. We already knew the prevalence of Lynch syndrome, but we really needed a dissemination and implementation project to make universal tumor screening accessible to everybody. So in the meantime, the OSU's James Cancer Center had and still has an annual grassroots bike ride called Pelotonia, and 100% of the money raised goes towards cancer research at the James. So in 2011, our cancer center's external advisory board suggested that we needed to do something big to get back to the state for all of the money raised, not just to benefit James patients. And so that's how the idea for the OCCPI study was born. All the stars kind of aligned, and we were able to get a large grant from Pelotonia to
that's great.
Universal tumor screening.
And that's the Ohio Colorectal Cancer Prevention Initiative. When you say OCCPI, just for the listeners.
OCCPI.
Yeah, that's great.
That's right.
So you made this amazing cohort of patients through hospitals. Can you describe what the OCCPI is a little bit more in depth and what the network is now?
Yeah, so we started with the same hospitals that we had used in the first study, but we expanded this time, across the state. We ended up getting 51 different sites across the state to participate. Many were community-based hospitals, and then several that were, larger institutions that had additional small hospitals throughout the community. Some approached us wanting to participate, and it was really grassroots effort getting everybody on board. But we're so glad to have such a great, strong network.
And so you leveraged that to really then put together some research for this article that we're discussing today. So for this article, what were the major goals and findings?
Yeah, so originally we were planning to just do universal tumor screening for Lynch syndrome, similar to the first study. But keep in mind that we started the study before multi-gene panels were really offered clinically. So our goals ended up changing from what we started with to what we ended up with. So when we first were brainstorming the study, we chose the University of Washington to do our germline panel testing for our mismatch repair deficient patients because they were the only labs at that time who were doing panels because of the Mary Claire breast cancer study. And then before we started accrual, Myriad got wind of the study and wanted to test all of our patients with mismatch repair proficient tumors because they wanted to prove that we were missing cases of Lynch syndrome. And of course, we wanted to prove that they weren't, which, spoiler alert, we were. So we agreed that they would test our high-risk mismatch repair proficient patients. And we had grouped those with a strong family history, synchronous tumors, and early onset cancer. And that group was originally just supposed to get the MMR genes, APC, MUYH, but after a few months, Myriad came out with their MyRisk panel. So our patients ended up getting that, which involved reconsenting many of the patients and getting new blood samples on all of them. But after we did that, about a year later, those initial studies out of Europe came about the double somatic mutations. And so we added somatic tumor testing for the patients with unexplained tumors. So long story short, what ended up as a large statewide study for Lynch syndrome turned into a large statewide study for hereditary colon cancer.
Yeah, no, but that's great to see how things adapted over time and just how cutting edge this was throughout the whole process is pretty impressive. Yeah.
And it was nice, with our large grant being able to add some of those tests that we originally, didn't have in the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what do you think the major impact of this work will be?
Well, there's a lot that we jammed into this publication. So our major findings, we found that 1 in 14 or 7% of our patients who received testing had at least one pathogenic variant. We know that this is actually an underestimate of the true prevalence because only our high-risk patients receive testing. The true prevalence is probably closer to 10 to 15%, shown by the Dana-Farber and Mayo papers. But we also found that 16% of individuals with early onset colon cancer have at least one pathogenic variant. And we know this is the true prevalence because all of our early onset patients got multi-gene panel testing. We also found that 88% of our patients with unexplained mismatch repair deficient tumors have double somatic mutations, which is actually the highest percentage reported to date. We had published a separate paper in 2019 showing that double somatic mutations can be predicted by IHC and clinical features. So not as much with this paper using our same cohort, but perhaps most importantly, we reported that had universal tumor screening alone been the only method used to screen for hereditary cancer syndromes, 38.6% of our patients would have been missed, including many of those who have Lynch syndrome. Yeah. So, we found we're missing Lynch syndrome in the proficient arm, and we found unexpected mutations in both the deficient and proficient arms.
And this was a huge undertaking. You said you had 50 hospitals or so. Yeah. Were there any challenges to pulling this entire data set together?
There are a lot of challenges to pulling the data together. Overall, I think our biggest challenge was not having panel testing on everybody. We also ran into challenges with patients being tested at different labs because they didn't all offer the same genes. And then there were also variations between the two labs with how some of the variants were classified, like the famous CHEK2 I157T variant that's in the US at Myriad and pathogenic or low penetrant everywhere else. I can also tell you, though, that pulling everything together for our publication just in general was very challenging. It's really complex when you have thousands of patients and so many different data points, MSI and IHC, relation, germline, somatic testing, family history. We had envisioned a nice flow chart where, we were showing the process of everybody going through tumor testing to germline testing to somatic testing. And it became quite complicated because some patients had insufficient tumor and didn't get a test, or we had patients fitting into multiple categories. So we were able to make our flow chart, but there is certainly a lot of asterisks.
Yeah. And did you have a central database for all this?
We do have a central database and then some very trusty spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets are the backbone of any good research project.
They are, yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything you could cut out of this article or there just wasn't space for that you wish you would have added?
Just for study design, I wish that we could have gotten germline panels of everybody. In terms of the actual article, we had initially included more detail on the cascade testing that was done, but we had to cut a lot of it due to word count. We haven't really gotten into that very much, but we did offer free genetic counseling and germline testing to all of our patients who are found to have mutations in their family members. And we used some pretty novel methods for cascade testing. Hopefully we'll be publishing that in the future.
Oh, that's great. And so leading to the future, so what are you working on now?
Well, Heather and I are currently working on another Pelotonia statewide study called the Ohio Prevention and Treatment for Endometrial Cancer, which is a very similar study to the OCCPI, except for endometrial cancer patients, as you probably guessed from the title. We're doing germline multi-gene panel testing for all and then upfront tumor sequencing. but it's on a little bit of a smaller scale. We're only enrolling about 1,000 endometrial cancer patients. We ended accrual in December, but we're now working on publishing the results.
Oh, wow. And that's using the same OCCPI network?
It's not all 51 hospitals, but the hospitals, most of them were included in the original network.
Where do you think the field of hereditary colorectal cancer testing is going?
Good question. So we think that all colon cancer patients should be offered germline multi-gene panel testing. Yes, universal tumor screening still needs to be done because it drives immunotherapy options, but it probably shouldn't drive who gets gene testing. We know that tumor screening won't catch all of the individuals who have Lynch syndrome, and an appreciable portion are also going to have non-mismatch repair variants anyways. So I think the future is germline multi-gene panel testing for all individuals with colon cancer.
Thank you so much for coming on. And I hope our listeners explore the paper. As you brought up, there's a lot in it.
There's a lot.
So it's a very deep paper. So I encourage people to look it over. And thank you again for coming on and sharing some of the wisdom that went into it.
Thanks so much, TJ. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about OCCPI. And obviously, I hope that our CGA members find it interesting as well.